The explosion at Ron van Uffelen's house wasn't the first. It wasn't even the 20th. The plumber from Vlaardingen had been targeted 27 times in 14 months. When he died of a heart attack, likely worsened by the stress, the attacks didn't stop. 2 days after his funeral, they struck again. This is the Netherlands today, a country experiencing an explosion crisis that authorities struggle to control. In 2024, police responded to 1,543 explosive attacks. In the first half of 2025 alone, there were 678 attacks and attempted attacks with explosives. But behind these numbers lies a deeper story about motorcycle clubs that were supposed to disappear. On June 18, 2018, Dutch courts banned Satudarah Motorcycle Club completely. Germany had already banned them in 2015. Norway followed in 2024. These organizations were legally eliminated, their operations shut down, their members forbidden from gathering. Yet police intelligence from 2024 revealed something disturbing. Investigators suspect that Satudarah still operates 14 chapters underground in the Netherlands. The Hells Angels maintain 18 secret chapters. No Surrender runs 16 hidden cells. All this despite being officially banned. The failed prohibition. When Dutch courts banned Satudarah in 2018, the legal victory seemed complete. The Hague District Court ordered the immediate ending of all activities by the motorcycle club in the Netherlands. The decision was upheld on appeal in 2019. The Supreme Court confirmed the ban, making it final under Dutch law. Similar bans followed across Europe. In February 2015, Germany banned Satudarah after calling them a serious danger to public safety. Police raids swept through 5 states, targeting clubhouses and member properties. Norway's Supreme Court banned the club in October 2024, calling participants in the club people who repeatedly committed serious offenses against someone's life, health, and freedom. But legal elimination and practical elimination proved to be different things. Since the Netherlands banned larger outlaw motorcycle clubs like Hells Angels, Satudarah, and No Surrender, the number of smaller clubs has risen steadily. The Netherlands now counts 84 small outlaw motorcycle clubs, according to police reports. Many of these new clubs were founded by former members of banned organizations. Police note that the members of the majority of the new clubs are often more radical than the former members. Without the established hierarchies and traditions of older clubs, these new organizations operate with fewer internal constraints. The underground reality. The police intelligence paints a picture of banned clubs that continue operating in secret. The police noted that banned clubs still have chapters in the Netherlands. Investigators suspect that the Hells Angels still had 18 chapters underground last year. Satudarah had 14, and No Surrender 16, the police believe. These underground operations don't function like their legal predecessors. Instead of maintaining visible clubhouses and holding public events, they operate through networks that are harder for law enforcement to detect and monitor. Members might technically belong to new clubs with different names while maintaining loyalty to banned organizations. The adaptation extends beyond simple rebranding. These clubs are also expanding abroad, opening new chapters in Spain and South America. The clubs abroad may have become more attractive because of their ban in the Netherlands, police wrote. What was intended to eliminate these organizations instead forced them to become more international and sophisticated. In neighboring countries, similar adaptations have occurred. In Denmark, the local Satudarah chapter dissolved itself in May 2023 and became Comanche's MC. Rather than fight a legal ban, they simply changed names while maintaining the same membership and activities. The explosion crisis. The Netherlands is experiencing an unprecedented wave of explosive attacks. The numbers are staggering and continue to grow. Attacks on premises or homes skyrocketed from 212 in 2021 to 1,017 in 2024, according to police reports. Most explosions take place in the Rotterdam and Amsterdam regions. Over 70% of the attacks take place in the big cities, particularly Rotterdam, Amsterdam, and The Hague, but small towns are not exempt. The attacks use powerful fireworks and improvised explosive devices to damage property and intimidate targets. The perpetrators are often youngsters, some no more than teenagers. Police arrested a 13-year-old for his involvement in a firebombing incident at a house in Medemblik. A 14-year-old and a 15-year-old were picked up in connection with other incidents. A 23-year-old man died when his own explosive device detonated prematurely in The Hague. Despite successful efforts to track down perpetrators, the number of attacks continues to grow because criminals find new recruits to do their dirty work while they stay under the radar, police said. 6 different young firebombers have been arrested in the Vlaardingen case involving Ron van Uffelen, but the attacks kept coming even after his death. The criminal network's police investigations have revealed the nature of the networks behind many explosive attacks. The police had always worked on the assumption that most of the attacks could be linked to criminal groups, but research has since found that over half are the result of domestic conflicts between non-criminal citizens, often over relationships. However, the techniques and recruitment methods used in these attacks often trace back to organized criminal networks. The use of explosives for intimidation, the recruitment of teenage couriers, and the systematic targeting of specific properties all reflect methods that were refined by motorcycle clubs during their legal operations. Some attacks do appear to be related to conflicts between drug groups, although police think some are down to copycat behavior. The normalization of explosive violence as a method of dispute resolution represents a significant change in Dutch society, where techniques originally used by organized crime have spread to civilian conflicts. Law enforcement agencies face the challenge of combating not just organized criminal networks, but a broader phenomenon where extreme violence has become an accepted method of resolving disputes. People in dispute with others then attempt to solve it by using an incendiary device to intimidate them, according to police analysis. The Satudarah legacy. To understand the current situation, it's important to know what Satudarah represented during its legal existence. Satudarah MC was founded in 1990 by 9 mainly Moluccan friends who lived in the Moluccan neighborhood of Moordrecht, South Holland. The name Satudarah means one blood in Indonesian Malay. In the Netherlands, Satudarah MC had the reputation of being extremely violent and ruthless, more so than the local chapter of the Hells Angels. The club established an international presence with chapters in multiple countries across Europe, Asia, and beyond. Members of the motorcycle club have frequently been tied to cases of violent crime, extortion, illegal drug trade, and arms trafficking. The Dutch court found that criminal behavior was accepted in the club, as demonstrated by internal communications about members in detention and financial assistance provided to imprisoned members. The court also noted that board members of Satudarah ordered other members to commit criminal acts, using the club's strict hierarchy. Acts of aggression by members were rewarded with patches, while the club imposed a code of silence on its members and intimidated witnesses. International expansion. Satudarah's international reach extended far beyond Europe. The national president of Satudarah, who is based in Melbourne, said in 2018 that chapters had been established in all Australian states. In 2019, and reopened in 2024, splinter groups in Western Australia were said to be feuding with each other. The club's expansion strategy was aggressive and calculated. Satudarah MC established itself in Antwerp in 2012 under the name Satudarah Belgium District 9. By 2014, they had chapters in multiple countries, but law enforcement pressure began to mount. In 2014, the Swedish chapter of Satudarah was disbanded after all its members were arrested for weapons possession and drug offenses. This pattern of law enforcement action, followed by organizational adaptation, became characteristic of the club's response to legal pressure. The international nature of Satudarah's operations meant that bans in individual countries often had limited long-term impact. When one jurisdiction eliminated local operations, the organization could maintain its network through chapters in more permissive legal environments. Government response. Dutch authorities have recognized that their approach to motorcycle club violence requires adjustment. The government established a Strategic Offensive Against Explosions task force to coordinate responses to the attack epidemic. Over 500 arrests were made in 2024, but the attacks continued to escalate. The police think that a bill giving the Minister for Legal Protection the authority to ban undermining organizations will help in the fight against criminal motorcycle clubs. This proposed legislation would expand the government's power to target organizations beyond traditional motorcycle clubs. However, local authorities often find themselves overwhelmed by the scale of the problem. Some local councils, such as Vlaardingen, are running out of options as costs for camera surveillance are mounting, and there is not enough police capacity to guarantee the safety of residents. The Hague deployed 23 movable surveillance cameras, but the number of explosions in the city doubled despite increased monitoring. Mayor Ron van Uffelen admitted there is no quick and simple solution to the complex problem facing his city. The recruitment pattern. The use of young people in explosive attacks reveals sophisticated recruitment networks that continue to operate despite law enforcement pressure. The recruitment patterns often involve intermediaries who create separation between those ordering attacks and those carrying them out. Many attacks are commissioned through encrypted messaging apps, creating layers of separation between leadership and execution. This structure protects higher-level organizers while ensuring a renewable supply of operatives willing to plant explosives for financial compensation. The youth involved in these attacks often come from vulnerable backgrounds and may not fully understand the legal consequences of their actions. Police reports indicate that the same organizational structures that once provided advancement opportunities for adult motorcycle club members now exploit children who face adult criminal penalties for following orders. Criminologist Katarina Krusselman warned that heavier punishments alone won't deter these young executioners. The young people who are now hired through an intermediary to place an explosive will not refuse an assignment if it carries a heavier punishment, she explained to Dutch media. The geographic pattern. The concentration of explosive attacks in specific regions reveals patterns that may reflect territorial control or influence. Most explosions take place in the Rotterdam and Amsterdam regions, areas that were traditional strongholds for motorcycle club operations during their legal existence. These geographic patterns suggest that while motorcycle clubs may have been banned legally, their influence on criminal activities in specific territories may persist through other means. The concentration of violence in particular areas reflects the continuation of conflicts and territorial disputes that began during the legal era of club operations. Rotterdam has been particularly affected by the explosion crisis. The city's position as a major port and its history of organized crime make it a focal point for various criminal activities. The persistence of explosive attacks in these areas suggests that banning clubs hasn't eliminated the underlying territorial and economic factors that drove their original establishment. Amsterdam has experienced similar patterns, with attacks concentrated in specific neighborhoods rather than distributed randomly across the city. This geographic clustering suggests that the violence serves specific purposes related to territorial control or intimidation, rather than random criminal activity. The copycat effect. One of the most significant developments in the Dutch explosion crisis is the spread of these techniques beyond organized crime networks. Research has found that over half the explosive attacks result from domestic conflicts between non-criminal citizens, often over relationships. This represents a fundamental change in how ordinary people resolve disputes. Techniques that were once the exclusive domain of organized criminal groups have been adopted by civilians who have no direct connection to motorcycle clubs or other criminal organizations. The normalization of explosive violence in civilian disputes demonstrates how criminal innovations can spread throughout society. When motorcycle clubs pioneered the use of explosives for intimidation and territorial control, they created tactical templates that others could adopt, regardless of their connection to organized crime. Law enforcement agencies now face the challenge of combating both organized criminal networks and a broader social phenomenon where extreme violence has become normalized as a dispute resolution method. This dual challenge complicates efforts to address the root causes of the explosion epidemic. The economic factors. The continuation of explosive attacks, despite massive law enforcement efforts, reveals the economic incentives that sustain these activities. The financial rewards for planting explosives, combined with the low barrier to entry for recruitment, create a sustainable market for violence that's difficult to eliminate through arrests alone. The separation between those who order attacks and those who carry them out creates an economic structure that can absorb law enforcement pressure without collapsing. Each arrest of a low-level operative simply creates a vacancy that can be filled by new recruits attracted by the same financial incentives. The cost of explosives and the technical knowledge required to use them remain relatively low, making these attacks accessible to a wide range of potential perpetrators. This accessibility contributes to both organized criminal use and civilian adoption of these techniques. The economic sustainability of these networks suggests that addressing the explosion crisis will require more than law enforcement action. Without addressing the underlying economic incentives that drive recruitment and participation, arrests and prosecutions may have limited long-term impact on the overall problem. Current status. As of 2025, the situation in the Netherlands continues to evolve. The number of explosive attacks shows no sign of decreasing, with 678 incidents in just the first half of the year. The techniques originally developed by motorcycle clubs during their legal existence continue to spread through both criminal networks and civilian society. Police intelligence suggests that banned motorcycle clubs maintain significant influence despite their legal elimination. The 14 suspected Satudarah chapters, 18 Hells Angels networks, and 16 no-surrender cells represent organizational continuity that legal prohibition has been unable to break. The 84 new small motorcycle clubs that have emerged since the bans provide additional evidence that eliminating specific organizations doesn't eliminate the underlying factors that made them attractive to members. These new groups often exhibit more radical behavior than their predecessors, suggesting that fragmentation may have made the overall problem worse rather than better. The international expansion of banned clubs provides additional challenges for law enforcement agencies that must coordinate across multiple jurisdictions with different legal systems and enforcement capabilities. The global nature of these networks means that success in one country may simply redirect activities to other locations rather than eliminating them entirely. Lessons and implications. The Dutch experience with motorcycle club bans offers important lessons about the limitations of legal prohibition as a strategy for combating organized crime. While courts can eliminate organizations legally, they cannot eliminate the relationships, skills, and economic incentives that made those organizations successful in the first place. The emergence of 84 new clubs following the bans suggests that prohibition may force adaptation rather than elimination. Criminal organizations can restructure, rebrand, and relocate their activities while maintaining the same essential functions that made them dangerous originally. The spread of explosive violence to civilian disputes demonstrates how criminal techniques can contaminate broader society. The normalization of extreme violence as a dispute resolution method represents a form of cultural change that may persist long after the original criminal organizations have been eliminated. The international expansion of banned clubs reveals how local enforcement success can create global challenges. Organizations that are eliminated in one jurisdiction may strengthen their operations in others, creating a criminal arbitrage where enforcement pressure in one location simply redirects activities elsewhere. Conclusion. The story that began with Ron van Uffelen's 27 attacks in Vlaardingen reflects a broader transformation in Dutch society. The plumber's ordeal, which continued even after his death, demonstrates the persistence of violence networks that operate beyond traditional law enforcement capabilities. The Netherlands banned Satudarah, Hells Angels, and No Surrender through comprehensive legal action that eliminated their official existence. Yet police intelligence from 2024 suggests these organizations continue operating through 14, 18, and 16 underground chapters respectively. The legal victory that was supposed to end their story instead marked the beginning of a new chapter. The 1,543 explosive attacks that terrorized Dutch communities in 2024 represent more than random criminal violence. They reveal the continuation of techniques and networks that trace back to banned motorcycle clubs, even as those methods have spread to civilian disputes and copycat behavior. The emergence of 84 new small motorcycle clubs demonstrates that prohibition often forces adaptation rather than elimination. These new organizations, often founded by former members of banned clubs, operate with fewer constraints and more radical approaches than their predecessors. The international expansion of these networks, from Spain to South America, shows how local enforcement success can create global challenges. What was intended to eliminate criminal organizations in the Netherlands instead forced them to become more sophisticated, more international, and more difficult to combat through traditional law enforcement methods. The spread of explosive violence to civilian disputes represents perhaps the most significant long-term consequence of this transformation. When ordinary citizens adopt techniques developed by organized crime to settle personal conflicts, the influence of banned clubs extends far beyond their direct membership or activities. Police continue to arrest perpetrators, and authorities continue to deploy resources against the explosion epidemic. But the numbers suggest these efforts have limited impact on the overall problem. The 678 attacks in the first half of 2025 represent a 5% increase over the previous year, despite massive law enforcement efforts. The underground networks that emerged from banned motorcycle clubs have demonstrated remarkable resilience and adaptability. They have survived legal prohibition, law enforcement pressure, and international coordination efforts while maintaining the capacity for violence and criminal enterprise that made their predecessors dangerous. Whether these networks can truly be described as ruling Dutch streets depends on how one defines power and control. What's clear is that they continue to influence criminal activities, recruitment patterns, and violence techniques throughout the Netherlands, despite being officially eliminated years ago. The Dutch experience offers a cautionary tale about the limits of legal solutions to criminal problems. Courts can ban organizations, but they cannot eliminate the social, economic, and cultural factors that make those organizations attractive to potential members. Until those underlying conditions are addressed, new forms of criminal organization will continue to emerge from the ashes of the old. Ron van Uffelen's story ended with his death, but the networks that terrorized him continue to operate in the shadows of Dutch society. The explosions that shattered his peace in Vlaardingen represent just one example of a broader phenomenon that has transformed the Netherlands into a country where extreme violence has become normalized as a method of resolving conflicts. The question facing Dutch authorities isn't whether banned motorcycle clubs have been eliminated. Police intelligence confirms they haven't. The question is whether legal and social institutions can adapt fast enough to combat criminal organizations that have proven capable of surviving and thriving despite everything the state can throw at them.